Hi, folks. Welcome to another weekly here with the Timeline Longevity team. I'm joined here by Dr. Anurag Singh.
Hello, everybody.
Is it too late to wish everyone a happy new year?
No,
last chance.
It's not. Still, half of the month is not gone. So yes, happy new year, everybody. For those who are joining in for the first time.
Excellent. Well, welcome to another YouTube live. So today the topic is longevity myth busters.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get into that, thank you to everyone who pre-submitted questions. Please feel free to submit live questions on the chat here. We're here for you to answer your questions, any questions you have around longevity, timeline, obviously, Mitopure, Urolithin A, mitochondrial health. We're here for you folks. So thank you for your time. Just a quick reminder, while Dr. Anurag Singh is a phenomenal doctor, physician, scientist, he's not my doctor, he's not your doctor. So please make sure you do consult with your personal family physician on any health-related topics. So with that, let's jump in.
Mm-hmm. Let's do it.
So longevity is all the buzz right now. I don't know if you've seen, but the Time magazine cover for the month of January 2026 is all about longevity. The entire issue it's called the longevity issue. The Wall Street Journal has articles around longevity. The Washington Post has articles around longevity. So definitely a lot of buzz. Now the question is, where are the lines between myth and facts and reality, and what really works and what we've learned over the last 18 years, right? So. Yeah. We're calling in today from the Swiss Federal Technology Institute, EPFL, where Timeline was born and founded by Chris Rinch and Patrick Abisher, really with this idea of understanding the biological mechanisms of aging and really pioneering a totally different way of proactively approaching aging and longevity with clinically proven products. So let's get into some of the myths. So the first myth that we have here is aging is just about genetics. There's nothing you can do about it.
Genetics is probably 20% of that. There's often when I was training, they would say, "Oh, you should ask about a history of heart diseases. You should ask about a history of neurodegeneration if it runs in the family." So I do think there is a component of genetics for about 20, 25, 30%. But a lot of when you started talking about longevity, it's now really about the health span, right? What you're doing on a daily basis, your lifestyle, what you're eating, what you're putting in your plate, how much is your stress level, how good a sleep you're having, and how good a social circle you have. So it's just not. It's really what we call these multiple sort of factors that you need to keep in your center. To really extend your longevity and extend your health span. So yes, genetics, but most of it can be reversed, and that's what we are here to do.
And there was this Stanford study that talked around sort of the two peaks around aging, which I found fascinating. I mean, also linked to genetics, right?
So with the Stanford study that came out is a very highly talked about study last year from a group in Stanford. They had been studying a group of individuals all the way from their 40s all the way to, for a long time. And in different cohorts of these individuals, the 40s, 50s, 60s, all the way 90s, what they find is actually the early aging pattern starts happening late 30s, early 40s. That's, when you have this big shift of your biology and your cellular health that kind of moves in the aging trajectory. And then a second push comes around the late 50s and the early 60s, where you kind of get more the physiological impact related biomarkers happening. So aging is a spectrum. And I think that's the problem with modern medicine, actually, that it trains you to only look at the symptomatology when it manifests in your 60s, 70s, and 80s. But aging as a cellular health dysfunction starts very early in almost 20, 30 years before.
So let's shift gears. Muscle. There's a myth that you can't build muscle after the age of 50.
That's one of the myths that I would like to bust every time I'm asked that question. It is always possible to build muscle. In fact, one of the best studies I reviewed actually for a top journal was a group of 80-year-olds who actually improved their VO2 max and put on muscle by regular training. So we have done studies ourselves where we have looked at old adults who are not exercising versus adults who are.
That was in Holland, right?
That was surprisingly in Holland, which is a very fit place and a very fit country. But what we did see was that with just regular physical activity, with just regular exercise, exercise is probably the most potent mitochondrial drug. And what people need to realize is that, yes, muscle mass will decline with aging, but it's really the how the muscle is contracting. It's really how the energy supply to the muscle is that really will dictate whether you're going to be able to get up from your chair and go and climb a few flights of stairs. So I think this whole awareness that you can tackle mitochondria at the muscle grassroots and improve your muscle health and improve your strength and muscle quality. I think that's the word I wanted to talk about, muscle quality. And that's what we have been really researching for the last 15 plus years.
So do you maybe for the audience, I mean, how would you define muscle quality? I mean, we've heard terms like bioenergetics. Like what does it mean and why does it matter?
So in the field of muscle, and muscle is clearly one of the longevity organs out there, the moment, and you can, in the studies we do, in the studies others have done, just looking at grip strength, it's probably the biggest biomarker of health and mortality we have, how good and firm your handshake is. So what we see kind of in this trajectory with repeat the question again. It's the muscle quality question.
Yeah,
right?
muscle quality.
Yeah.
So like bioenergetics and because people think about muscle and they think about, how does my six pack look
the field has been kind of super told that, well, take your protein, just build more muscle, but that's just not it, because even after 50 and 60, there's this concept that you can't just double your protein and get more amino acids made in the body and build muscle. There's a concept we call as anabolic resistance, meaning the body will just not absorb these things. So what you need to do is hit on the fuel supply and the absorption and how good the whatever muscle you have how good can it contract, how much force can it produce. And that's what we call as the concept of muscle quality, meaning the amount of strength, how your strength is compared relative to your mass. And so we have focused for the last 10 years on looking at interventions that can improve the strength and the quality per se, rather than just the mass.
Yeah. Great. Myth 3 here. So I feel fine. My mitochondria must be fine.
And probably if you think you're fine, you're exercising well, you're eating well, and your mitochondria are in an okay shape. Well, we do see now we've done studies in elite Olympian athletes who you would think that they are the pinnacle of human performance and probably the mitochondria are in the best shape ever. They're not, because just, overtraining and exercise regularly without taking enough breaks and allowing your mitochondria to heal themselves induces inflammation and induces damage. And so back to what we said, aging happens early. So you're probably fine now if you're a 30, 40-year-old. Cellular dysfunction, mitochondrial decline, and the zombie mitochondria start coming in and sort of shifting the balance very early on. You need to think proactively, as Federico was saying, early on in the process of improving, keeping your mitochondria and happy, as I say, always. And then you'll reap the rewards 10, 20 years down the line. So yes, good for you if you're feeling your mitochondria happy, but you can always make them happier.
Yeah. Just to double click on that. So there's been a couple of more recent clinical studies in more athletic sports populations. Can you maybe just summarize for the audience?
Yeah, last year was actually, so we've been, of course, we've been studying aging and the impact of aging and on mitochondrial health and on muscle health. And so for a long time, we found that interventions such as MitoPure were very actively improving strength and endurance in these sort of older populations, in sort of sedentary population. And the question was, will this be additive to exercise? And so we actually did a trial ourselves, and there were two trials that happened independently of us doing. One happened in Australia with soccer players, very young soccer players, actually a top soccer team. And they showed that soccer players in the team who were on Mitopure regularly, they just recovered better. And let's say post-training, for example, after a game, they had less fatigue. They had even more strength game after game. So that's one of the hallmark publications that came out in a top journal. What we found was that we were looking at elite Olympian runners and similar middle distance runners who were training for multiple competitions. And what we found was that taking regular Mitopure in these populations blunted the sort of the muscle damage response and the inflammatory response. And so that was a great finding. There was a third study that came out of the Sports Institute in Beijing in elite weightlifters, showing that just, this was additive to resistance training, that they were. So any stimulus, exercise, as we mentioned, is a great stimulant for a mitochondria, but anything on top that you add on, like Mitopure or other nutrients that hit mitochondria, would be beneficial.
So that's sort of the younger populations, which are more recent. But if you think about our clinical studies, we also have clinical studies in middle age and older. So what age groups have we looked at?
So we've looked at everything. We've been at it for, as you said, 15 plus years. We started with older adults. We looked at older adults who were sedentary, so not moving around too much.
So what sort of age
So they were 65, 70 plus age range. And we saw that just being sedentary compromised their mitochondrial health. And by not changing their diet, by not changing their physical activity levels, just giving them Mitopure for a month or 2 months, we basically recycled that damaged mitochondria into a process called as biogenesis, which means now you've taken the faulty, damaged zombie mitochondria out, and now you replace them with healthy new mitochondria, which we call biogenesis, and you change how their mitochondria looked in their skeletal muscle. And we then did trials in similar populations, more healthier active adults, which were moving around, and we gave them long-term supplementation. And we saw they could do more exercise in the gym. For example, if you did a leg press, they could do it 20% longer than the placebo-controlled older adults. We did
no change to anything else, diet, sleep, exercise.
Yeah, so it's hitting the same biology as what exercise would, or what intermittent fasting would do. This cascade of what we call mitochondrial rejuvenation, a process we call in nerdy terms as mitophagy. We did also trials in middle-aged 40, 50, 60-year-olds without changing diet and activity levels. Here again, we see about 10 to 12% improvement in leg muscle strength. We also see clinically relevant findings and just walking distances and their peak VO2 or VO2 max.
Yeah. So youngest patient, 18?
Well, I wouldn't call it patient. I would say youngest
participant. Sorry,
18, and the oldest 89-year-old, very sprightly lady who swore her gardening improved with Mitopure. So yes, we've seen it all.
Okay, next myth here. NAD boosters like NMN and NR, and I see a few folks on the chat. Thank you for your questions. Please do continue to submit, asking a question related to this. So NAD boosters like NMN or NR are the best way to support energy.
So NAD is a very sort of physiological process that is inbuilt inside the mitochondria to as a sort of fuels energy producing source. So yes, with aging, when mitochondria get compromised, NAD levels go down with aging. And there is this belief that you could replenish these NAD stores, and that would somehow translate into more improved energy. And they certainly, the trials that I've been actually a peer reviewer and looked at do show that taking these NAD boosters helps in boosting by 10, 20% these NAD levels. What is not really clear is the long-term impact of boosting by that, fold NAD supplementation on long-term health. Like, what is it causing to muscle longevity, or was it causing to brain decline, cognitive decline? The other thing people need to understand is that NAD boosters will really work if the damaged mitochondria have been cleaned out from the cellular sort of real estate, which is most of these compounds don't do the job. So in mitochondrial biology, or as we age, you always have the yin and yang of good and bad mitochondria. With aging, we just collect a lot of these bad zombie mitochondria. And so it's like, if you imagine a neighborhood with bad buildings, that's the kind of situation that happens. And so you need like a Pac-Man or a trash pickup van to show up regularly, and that's what stops with aging. And so what MitoPure does very uniquely is that it just activates this sort of disposing the zombie mitochondria process, and that makes the real estate more amenable to having healthier new mitochondria. And so there is a thought that adding things like NAD boosters on Urolithin A perhaps could help, but I think Urolithin A, what we see in our trials is it cleans out the waste, but that already induces biogenesis or near healthy mitochondria.
Yeah. Cool. Next myth here: longevity is just about living longer.
Yeah, big myth to bust. So I think now in the longevity field, we have two camps essentially. One that wants to live all the way 100, 150. That's one crowd, and I certainly admire them for their aspirations. But I belong in more the health span camp of where you want to be in your 70s, you want to be in your 80, and you want to be functionally better. So live long as possible, humanly possible, but live functionally better. And that's the motto we do all our research and sort of all our ideology on. So, and when I talk about health span, I talk about muscle as the key longevity organ. I think there are two other key longevity organs. One is our cognitive health, the brain, and the third is the immune system. All these together are massive consumers of energy, and they have a lot of mitochondria. A skeletal muscle has thousands of mitochondria at a single cell level. So the energy consumption with aging, the demand, they just can't keep up. And so you need to keep these three organs absolutely happy to have health span. So I do think health span is the first target, and as a side effect, we will live longer.
Yeah. So IV drips, I mean, I get this question all the time. IV drips and expensive hacks are the future of longevity. I mean, do you do any IV drips, vitamin C drips, NAD drips, any of this stuff? What are your thoughts on that?
I think I know it's getting popular with the vitamin multivitamins, and there's certainly some more literature out there. There's certainly, I know fatigue people get a lot of vitamin B12 injections, and that's pretty well documented. Iron injections. What is less clear is this new trend of NAD drips and NAD IV, where I do feel this is sort of people are trying to go with the quick fix when we already don't know what this massive flux or massive push of NAD boost will cause in terms of the energy imbalance in the body. So I personally feel there's more science that needs to be done. I personally feel there more long-term effects needs to be studied. The jury's out there.
Yeah. Okay. Fatigue is next myth. Fatigue is just part of getting older.
Actually, no. I think fatigue is actually a signal that our bodies is giving that we are running sort of on low fuel. It's like, my cell phone right now with 10% battery, and that's a signal, right? So what it means is that your mitochondria are in bad shape, they are faulty, and you need to fix that core problem of mitochondria, and fatigue levels would come back. It's actually a very common thing we hear from our trial participants. We hear also from real world that people who are doing the right things for their mitochondria, and also people on MitoPure supplementation, they feel they have a little bit more left in the tank. So I think fatigue is really a core signal the body is giving that our cellular health needs to be acted on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's it for the myths. So we're going to jump into some live questions from the chat. So there's a few questions just around dosing. People that have been taking a gram for a couple of months, 2 to 4 months. Is a gram the right dose? Is there an option to maybe now cycle down to 500 milligrams? What are your thoughts on dosing?
So we've done almost 20 odd trials, randomized clinical trials. A lot have been done on the gram dose. There have been many done on the 500 milligram dose. What we do see is a dose-dependent improvement in mitochondrial health. So from 500 milligram to a gram, you will see a sort of a quicker effect, perhaps. When we go, we see, for example, the gram dose having much quicker immune effects. We do see similar effects on muscle in terms of strength and sort of energy impact on inducing mitophagy and removing these zombie mitochondria. So I think if you're a healthy, fit person doing everything right, you're exercising regularly, you watch what you eat, you know the top supplements you're taking for your cellular health, 500 milligram is probably the right dose because, you know, you're in good shape. Sort of that's the maintenance dose that I think everybody should take. If you do have issues like chronic fatigue, if you do know after checking in with your doctor and your blood labs that you have an inflamed body, that's when I say try the gram dose for a while, at least a month, 2 months. And then if you feel better, if you feel the effects, then you can always go down to the maintenance dose of 500 milligram. Yeah. And vice versa, if you're not feeling that 500 milligram is doing anything to you, try upping the dose.
Yeah. How should people think about stack? And obviously this may be very personal, but a few questions here around, you know, should I stop all other supplements I'm taking? Can I combine this with other things? Like, for example, some people are taking NMN, NR, also questions around quercetin and fisetin.
Yeah, quercetin and fisetin are very different in terms of how they function on a different hallmark of aging. They hit on something we call senescence, and they are known what we call in the field senolytics. So they're sort of removing at a cellular levels these sort of zombie cells that are taking a lot of nutrients. But the way I see mitochondrial health is the foundation of cellular health. So when you're taking your multivitamin or your CoQ10 or your omega-3, you are taking it because you want your cells to be in better health and better shape. But at the foundation of it is mitochondrial health, because if your mitochondria are better, you will absorb all these nutrients better. And same for, we talked about already, these NAD boosters. I think if you have put, I personally think MitoPure is sort of the first layer, the foundational layer on which you can stack many of these supplements to make them work better and more efficiently.
So there's a hypothesis that, you know, MitoPure could make other supplements potentially work better.
That's a hypothesis. We need to, of course, run trials to prove that. But
and why would that be? I mean, how would that?
At a cellular level, so when we go to the lab and we do biopsies and we look at muscle cells and we throw in these compounds with MitoPure, we just see an augmentation of the effects of these compounds. So if you were to take magnesium, for example, that is commonly used for muscle recovery, and you were to tag MitoPure supplementation with it, we just see magnesium work better than, you know, on sort of the damage and recovery pathways. And of course, just because your muscle quality is better, what we started chatting, the muscle fuel supply is better. So I do think that you can stack it. You don't need to overstack, obviously, by trying too many things. There are a few, you know, in the longevity field, you need to look at the clinical signs and the clinical evidence. Yes, there's enough on omega-3. Yes, there's enough on magnesium. And I think there are things like vitamin Bs, perhaps, and MitoPure falls into that category as well.
Yeah. Okay. There's a question here around statins, which we get quite often. What are your thoughts on that? People who are on statins?
So statins, in some of our older adult trials, we did allow statins to be used. We don't usually allow, in at least the trial settings, because statins are known to be mitochondrial sort of disturbing drugs, right? So statins are traditionally, for those not familiar, they're used to lower cholesterol and sort of lower your cardiovascular risk. they come with a lot of side effects, and those side effects range from sort of muscle damage and muscle problems, muscle pain, mostly triggered by the impact of these statin drugs on the mitochondria. So I think adding MitoPure on top would probably help, because it will kind of keep the sort of the negative impact of a lot of these modern medicines that are not so good for mitochondria. But yeah, please consult with your doctor.
Okay. Questions around format: gummies versus soft gel versus capsules versus the powder.
They are all what I call bioequivalent now. That is a clinical term, which means that if you were to take a sachet containing 500 milligram of the very product versus 2 soft gels versus 2 gummies that are all giving you 500 milligram of MitoPure, and in a clinical setting, we will have a cohort taking the powder, we'll have a cohort taking a soft gel, and we'll have a cohort taking the 2 gummies. And then we'll do repeated blood draws over time, and we will look at the absorption of Urolithin A over a period of 24 hours to 72 hours. And then we will quantify the absorption and the blood levels of Urolithin A, and they're identical. And that's what allows us to say that now we feel very confident that the gummy is going to give you the same benefits as a soft gel as a very popular.
Yeah, I mean, the gummies, understandably and rightly so, have a lot of consumer skepticism, right, around, does it deliver the right absorption? Does it deliver the right?
A lot of people are fasting, and so they obviously have a big concern about breaking their fast as well. I think a lot of people also prefer the soft gels for that reason, even though our gummies are sugar-free. So I think it's really
a format
and lifestyle preference, what you prefer.
Yeah, great. Questions around, just back to sort of feeling the benefits and maybe the time, just to summarize for people. A couple of people here have been on the product for a couple of months. Some people have been on the product for 4 months. Also questions around, if I want to stop taking MitoPure, to check that it's actually working, how long would it take for the effects to wear off? So maybe let's break it down and just start with, at a very basic level, if you think about the pharmacokinetics. I mean, how quickly does MitoPure get into your blood? How does the timeline look?
So we've done that we've done it in the Olympians, we've done that in the 80-year-olds we were talking about. From the time you take 2 gummies or 2 pills or a berry powder in whatever format, it takes about 6 to 8 hours for it to peak in your blood. And it takes another 24 hours when the levels will start to go down to where you will not be getting any benefits. So it's really, the window is sort of a daily dosing window. And what we see is if you take this regularly, and this is based on placebo-controlled randomized clinical trials that we've been doing for the last 10 plus years in different populations, we see it takes about a month. This is not a magic pill. Okay, so you're not going to feel instant effects. Aging is a continuum, and the sort of continuum damage in mitochondria and the stress on mitochondria takes time for them to be the zombie, dysfunctional mitochondria to be cleaned out, replaced by new healthy mitochondria, and that we start seeing in a month in at a biomarker level. 2 months in, if you were going to the doctor and doing an endurance test, or you were going to the gym, you'll start seeing you're recovering better, you have more energy. And at 4 months, what we have seen is that this gets augmented to actually functional benefits, where people start having better leg strength and moving better and lower inflammation. So if you go to your doctor every 6 months or 4 months for your regular blood work, you will see the impact. In fact, we see, in almost every trial, we see all the inflammation markers go down. We see better immune cells, better immune profile in the blood work that people are doing. So yeah, give it time. It's not a magic pill. It will take time, and I think you'll start feeling the benefits a month, 2 months, 4 months into the product. When can you stop and then know exactly if it helped you? I think that's where you need to, you can do 2 things. You can do a blood work, as we were saying, with your doctor and see if there are benefits.
What would you look at in the blood work?
A lot of people ask me this. So today in the mitochondrial field, there is no, right now the biggest holy grail is what is that magic biomarker? I don't think we have cracked it yet. Is there one single biomarker? But as I said, mitochondria are the foundation of good cellular health. And if your cells are inflamed, you will be able to go and measure something with your doctor. You can chat on C-reactive protein, which is a regular blood test your doctor will do to check your inflammation levels in your body.
I think even Function Health now has it in the panel, right? CRP.
Yes, it's called HSCRP. You can also do a total blood count where your doctor can tell you how many white blood cells or these sentinels that keep you healthy and your immune cells functional. Are you having an impact there? And then, there are obviously these, we've been working with a few companies like True Diagnostic, looking at biological age. I think Function Health that also, again, has that, where you can, over a period of time, it won't happen again in 2 to 4 months, but I think longer term, you can expect to start seeing your cellular age get better over time.
Yeah.
So I think it's really a subjective plus a functional workout where if you go to the gym,
you're saying blood work, you're saying leg presses.
Yeah, I go to the gym and I know my soreness is when I'm traveling, and if I forget for a few days taking Mitopure, I know I'm sore after going to the gym, and that's how I feel it.
Yeah. Okay. A couple of questions here on a few more specific things. So I wonder how someone could benefit. Someone who had mitochondrial dysfunction from biotoxin, illness, celiac, fatigue, hypometabolism. So maybe you could, beyond sort of the research that we've done, what are other areas, sort of emerging areas that maybe other institutes are starting to explore?
Yes.
For Mitopure.
So we started the journey, as you said, 18 years back researching. Today, last year alone, there were 125 publications. We only contributed 4 of them. So they are 120 different groups, top research groups, studying how this molecule works, just not in mitochondrial biology, but what are its impacts. And I think if I have to summarize the 3 most exciting ones, one would be its effects on cognitive health. Others were at least 2 or 3 top groups from the Buck and from the National Institute of Aging that showed that this molecule, that with aging at a cellular level in the brain, this sort of mitophagy process of clearing out damaged mitochondria goes down. And one of the top, let's say, interventions that sort of restored that was Mitopure. The second one is really the immune health is sort of the first brick that falls in the whole longevity, and the aging cascade that happens with, we talked about early 40s. I think the realization that what we call now inflammaging is the centerpiece. If you act on early immune health is a very critical piece in the longevity. Yeah. So there are a lot of research groups now working on, you mentioned
what are your thoughts on just women's health? For example, I see some questions on HRT and hormones and women's health. I know it's still very early, but maybe you could speak to the participants in our study. What sort of the male-female split, the age group split, and also.
Yeah, so we make a very specific effort to have a very solid male-female ratio. In fact, all our trials, except the sport trials that we finished last year, have about a 60-40 women to men ratio. So for every 2 men, we will have 3 women participating in our studies. And the effects are pretty similar, irrespective of gender as well. Now, what we haven't studied in specific, and that's where I say research is also a continuum where you need to, every time you unlock a new finding, you have to build on it. We haven't specifically studied the combination with HRT or other, what's the impact on menopause and the fatigue that accompanies menopause. And these are areas we are actively now researching.
Yeah. Okay. Questions around, just back to stacking, questions around creatine, for example, or other supplements that may be potentially synergistic.
Well, creatine is probably one of the most studied supplements out there. Omega-3 and magnesium, probably those are my top 3 that I would say are the most clinically validated. Creatine hits also sort of the mitochondrial efficiency. So you can foresee, and as a mitochondrial scientist for 20 years, I can foresee that combining it with something like MitoPure could be additive, because in one area you're cleaning out the damaged mitochondria, and then you're sort of improving the efficiencies of the newly created ones. So that is an approach that could work pretty well. But in general, we already touched upon it. I do think that just improving mitochondrial health would have an additive effect on most of these interventions, but you should only try those that are clinically validated.
Questions around blood sugar, any impact on blood sugar, weight loss?
We hear this a lot. We hear a lot of folks who put these sensors on, the glucose censoring. Doctors writing to me saying, well, you should look into this area. So we haven't actively looked, but we do have an ongoing partnership trial with the National Institute of Aging in folks who are pre-diabetic and insulin resistant. And the goal there is really to see if you're improving mitochondrial health, if you're improving metabolism, if you're improving muscle health, you will have an impact on glucose uptake and how you sort of use these energy fuels. So we're waiting on this new set of data from our collaborators.
Okay. Just a couple of things on just safety. Question here on someone who's got a 13-year-old daughter who's an athlete, a young athlete. From a safety standpoint, what do we think?
Yeah, unfortunately, the only populations we in sort of the safety data we have is on adults, so 18 years and above.
Plus,
we don't have sufficient safety data to at least from my physician scientist perspective to recommend it to a 13-year-old.
Now, potentially they can't eat pomegranates or drink pomegranate juice.
They can
get
start early,
some level.
Yeah, so some people are natural producers of urolithin A. We have seen that. Very lucky ones. I call them the blessed folks because they're naturally eating right, and they have the right gut microbiome, which is an essential component too. So yeah, maybe try eating a lot of pomegranates and fermented foods, and you will get natural exposure to this molecule.
Yeah. I mean, you would need to. What's the calculation? 6 glasses of pomegranate juice a day?
So we ran that study long back, Federico, and what we saw was that, yes, 500 milligram is equivalent to drinking 6 glasses of pure pomegranate juice in terms of the levels of urolithin A. That's a lot of pomegranate sugar.
Shifting gears, skin. I want to talk a little bit about skin. As a longevity biotech. Why are we, from a science perspective, interested in skin? And if I'm already taking the supplement, why do I need the topical product?
Well, 2 reasons. So after looking at muscle and immune cells, we looked at skin cells just because we thought, well, what is happening was the first thing people notice, during the first thing they wake up in the morning to see if the rate of aging is, your face. And,
it's almost a great visible biomarker, right?
It is sort of a visible biomarker of aging. And so we started looking actually as a scientific curiosity at the mitochondria and skin cells. And we noticed the same patterns that, happen. So between a 30, 40-year-old to a 60, 70-year-old skin cells, we saw sort of this decline in mitophagy and accumulation of damaged poor mitochondria. And we also saw more inflammation and more senescence happening in these older skin cells. And that kind of led to the idea, yes, you could potentially be taking the oral supplement, having an impact through the systemic route on your skin cells, but you won't be reaching the top layers of so the skin as an organ is sort of very complex and thick organ. It has different layers. It has what we call the epidermis, which the first layer is actually the stratum corneum, the second layer is the epidermis, and the third is the deeper layer. So you could reach the deeper layer, but you won't be able to impact sort of the whole skin biology, the collagen levels, the elastin levels at a sort of surface level. And so that's why we created the topical products to act locally, to act faster at a cellular level on the skin. And you could combine them also and get sort of the the combination effects of sort of the topical and the systemic impact.
And are our skincare products clinically tested? I mean, how does that? I know the supplement industry can be a bit of the wild west. What about skincare?
So in skincare, it's even worse actually. I see most people claim they've done clinical trials, but there are actually some studies with surveys on clinical, in a few cohort of folks, and they call them as clinical trials. We've actually done. I was just writing all our report into a publication that we hope to publish soon. But we have done over 1,000 folks in 12 different trials the last 5 years since we got interested in the skin space, and looking first at a skin biology level. So we made creams with Mitopure, and we applied them on 40 to 50s, 50 to 60-year-old volunteers. And we saw this mitochondrial rejuvenation and an impact and dampening on the inflammation part. And that led us to creating really cutting-edge, best-in-class products that we then tested individually. And so we have done all these trials that basically show that it is possible to impact the same things at a skin level by improving your mitochondria, by sort of reversing this inflammaging cascade. And so I do think we have one of the best-in-class clinically tested products in the skincare industry.
Yeah, I mean, it really is an inside-out approach.
That is what it is, exactly.
And obviously, we want to feel our best, but we also want to look our best.
And there is no magic one intervention that can reverse sort of this longevity and improve your health span. You have to do a multi-targeted, multi-pronged approach.
Yeah. Couple of last questions here before we wrap up. And please make sure if we haven't answered your questions, folks, please do send those through to care@timeline.com. We'll make sure we get you follow-up answers here. So just a quick question on dose. So to clarify, if you want 500 milligrams, you're looking at basically 2 capsules a day or 2 gummies a day or 1 basically sachet of powder. There was a question around splitting the dose. If someone wants to do 1 gram, or even if they want to do 500 milligrams, are they better off taking 500 milligrams in one go, or are they better off splitting it in 2?
That comes up pretty commonly as well. In our clinical studies, we do it in one go, just because it's easier from a compliance and sort of fitting into the lifestyle. I have folks telling me they split it depending on, some people don't like to swallow a lot of pills in one go, so they take 2 in the morning and 2 in the day. Some have asked me, well, can we take it on breakfast instead of always on the fasted stomach? We have done the studies also there looking at, taking it with or without a meal, and it doesn't change the absorption of Mitopure. So whatever fits your lifestyle and your daily habits, I think you should apply it. But from a clinical perspective, I think taking it one go is probably the recommended way.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's basically it. Thank you very much, Dr. Singh, for all your super valuable advice. And we do have a couple of more of these coming up. So we've got the next one's coming up. It's why New Year's habits fail and what actually works. So that's happening on January 21st. So the idea, if this audience enjoys it, is to do a few of these, maybe even weekly for a period of time. And then we've got another one at the end of the month. If I were to start my longevity at 40, what would that look like?
Yeah, and we are also happy to hear what works for folks, right? I mean, I would like to hear the success stories with Mitopure.
Also, what doesn't, right?
Yeah, so both. So happy to hear and keep these conversations going.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Couple of questions just on pricing and discounts. So on pricing, there is, we do recognize obviously that this is an expensive supplement. But again, I just want to reemphasize, we get this question a lot. There are cheaper Urolithin A or so-called Urolithin A alternatives on places like Amazon. I would just caution everyone, folks, be really, really careful. This is something that you're ingesting. This is the only clinically studied Urolithin A in the world. And we've got 18 years of research and over 20 clinical studies that have gone into making sure that we're getting you the safest and the most effective product possible. So again, I always recommend, we're very transparent about this. If the best way to get Timeline at the lowest possible price is go for a subscription, go for our larger subscription and share it with family, share it with friends. And that is truly is the best way to get the best price. Today, we do have 45% off. So please go to the website. I think we just posted the link here on the chat. Make the most of the discount. If you have any issues with your subscriptions, you can just send an email through to care@timeline.com and they'll be happy to help you out. So with that, thank you very much again. Thank you, folks.
Pleasure.
Have
Thank
a
you,
great
everybody.
end of your week.